Hello there, dear viewers, and welcome to another edition of our literary program. Now, you'll be very surprised in whose residence I am right now, but then I will give that away a little while later. But before that, let me tell you that it is not every day we find a politician who also delves into poetry, who writes beautiful works, beautiful poems about his land, about his people, about his experiences in life, and yes, a lot about nature, about tradition, about values. Yes, so I might have just given a little bit of clue as to in whose residence I am right now. Well, I'm in the residence of Mr. Paul Lyngdoh, who is the working president of the United Democratic Party. And today, besides understanding his political acumen, we will also be understanding about his writing skills. Because, last year only he has just released a book of poems called A Return to Poetry. Now, besides that, he has also delved into other literary activities. So, I will go on and on speaking about you, Paul. But then before that, let me welcome you, a warm round of welcome from Doordarshan Kendra Shillong and to our literary program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful, nice little place you have. This is your library, Paul.
It is, although the entire collection is not here. I have a huge collection of books, so it's spread out all over the house.
Right. Because it's kept so neat and tidily. That also shows the persona that you are.
Thank you.
You believe in tidiness and cleanliness, right?
Thank you.
And talking about cleanliness, these days we are seeing that you are really speaking about the environment, right? I mean, and that gets reflected again and again also in your work. Why is environment so very important, Paul?
Well, because the environment is our mother. It nourishes us, and if we surround ourselves with a clean environment, that itself means that we are also clean, and we would like to propagate this idea all across the state. I think we've always been known to be very conscious of cleanliness and sanitation, and it is a value that we have lost over the years due to a number of factors. But today I'm happy that we're back on the right track as environmentally conscious citizens.
Absolutely. And having such pristine environment, I mean, we are a blessed land. I've always felt that our state is a very blessed land, because the kind of greeneries that we still have, I think we need to conserve them for posterity, for all our children to come in the future.
Yes, this is a sacrosanct duty as citizens and as people of the hills. Our tie to nature goes well beyond what is normally seen elsewhere. I mean, we call the earth Meiram Eo, our mother, and therefore, in fact, this is reflected in one of my poems of how Meiram Eo is an extension of our family, and therefore we cannot go on doing the stuff that we are doing to Mother Earth today.
And that was also a reason, isn't it, that recently a legislation has been passed under your leadership that plastics has been banned totally.
Yes. I'm very happy that we have been able to manage the support and enthusiastic involvement of all concerned, and we look forward to seeing better days as far as the environment is concerned.
Absolutely, no two arguments on that, because once we make a beginning, only then we will see an end to it, right?
Absolutely.
Because a good, healthy beginning is always good for the entire society.
True.
You have had ups and downs in your political career also. How has that, this kind of downs and ups again, does it sometimes, what kind of reaction does it have in you?
Well, I entered public life with this firm belief that in whatever capacity I am, whichever position I hold, I should be able to contribute meaningfully towards the good of society. And therefore, positions are immaterial to me. as someone said very cogently, you will always have ex-ministers and ex-politicians, but you'll never have ex-poets.
Right.
So poetry is eternal, and therefore in my career, I've always regarded politics as an antidote to the kind of the kind of exposure that we face in politics, the shady side of it, the underbelly of competitiveness, the level of to which people can sink in order to bring you down. This is an accepted fact of public life, but fortunately I have been blessed with the gift of poetry, which provides me that antidote, that therapy. Poetry has a therapeutic value.
Right.
And every time, that's why my book of poems, which I released last year, is called A Return to Poetry.
Right.
So, and in fact, I can read out from this poem.
Yes, we will
so
be,
that,
of course, yes.
You'll understand my insight into this whole situation
Absolutely,
better.
that's what I was coming into. Because despite leading a very hectic political career, political life, because you're always seen in the forefront of many activities, many and issues, many and initiatives that you have taken, yet you are finding time to write, to pen your thoughts. How do you balance, when has these kind of balance come into your life?
I think it comes naturally to somebody with a creative soul, and it's very important to counterbalance the ill effects of public life with all the negativity that you generally find in Indian public life. It's important that you also look for a shelter. You look for, as Dylan would have called it, a shelter from the storm. And in poetry, this is something that I find. And therefore, poetry to me is not only an antidote, it is also a therapy, and it is also a weapon. Okay. So using these three frames with which poetry can adorn itself, I've survived in life.
Now let us now come to your writing, because you have been writing apparently over 2 decades now.
More than 2 decades.
More than 2 decades, yes. So, has it always been in you to pen down your thoughts? Have you always been writing little notes here and there and then shape them up into beautiful poems later?
Yeah, I started very early. I believe that a poet is born and cannot be made.
All right.
And of course, when I look back and read what I've written as a kid, I laugh at them. They're juvenile. Right. But then that's how all great art starts with. So I think the first thing that you need to do, that I have done, is to fall in love with words.
Okay.
And once you are engaged in such a relationship with words, you would always try to find an outlet for your pent-up feelings and emotions and experiences. And those experiences can be expressed either in the form of music or poetry. And I'm happy that I've been able to do both.
Absolutely. Now, a book of yours that got released is, of course, A Return to Poetry.
Right.
Let us talk about the title itself. I mean, many people may have asked you this question, but I'm also asking you. A return to poetry. So, are you planning to, come back very strongly to writing, or is it politics and writing? Will they be side by side also?
Well, I can best explain this if I read out the poem itself.
All right.
So, I think I should do that.
Yes, I think you should do that. Yes. All right. So, Bapol, you are going to explain to us how poetry really happened to you, and I think you want to read out one such poem from your work itself.
Yes. Let the poem speak for itself.
All right.
This is called A Return to Poetry. The morning newspapers, with a menu of violence, scams and deception, constitute my breakfast. In the bus stop, men huddle to debate another possible fall of the government, and words like sacrifice, loyalty, and trust are liberally bandied about like free condoms in an AIDS awareness campaign. In the ruling party room, warm handshakes and embraces barely cloak poisonous sabers eager to draw blood, and words of camaraderie ring empty like the used teacups. Conversations drift, and once more the topic shifts to profits and deals. I can only return to poetry, my long lost friend of lean evenings and futile days. Poetry, comforter of a desolate heart, salve to a maddened mind. Poetry, refuge of the pain burdened, fine wine for thirsty lips. Poetry, let your wings shelter me, and in its folds let me find a retreat for lost souls, an asylum whenever my faith in humanity ebbs.
Absolutely. I think the three key words that I've just picked up from this poem that you have read out is refuge, retreat, and asylum.
Yes.
Right? So that
Absolutely.
itself shows that when you have the time, you just whenever you're tired out from many of your public endeavors, you take refuge to your poetry, right? Right. But then, as you said a little while back, that can a person be born as a poet? No. Can we create a person? Can a poet be created?
My very personal view is that poets are born and not made. I think one can learn the art of story writing or fiction writing, but poetry has to be inborn.
And a poet, I think, has to have varied emotion, because in this work also there are a varied strain of emotions you have expressed.
Right.
Very, very vocally sometimes also. You have expressed very strongly about Mother Nature. You've expressed very strongly about the traditions, the customs also of this. You're proud, you're a very proud Khasi also, which gets reflected also in your work.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so all these, you have actually divided this work of yours into three sections.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So why have you segmented them into three?
That's because the first segment belongs to what I call the prison poems which I wrote when I was in jail as a student leader.
Right.
And the second part was post that phase. And the third part, of course, were poems which I wrote, specimens of poems which I wrote as a college student. Yes, and a high school student earlier than that.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you also were facing those years, those tumultuous years, and you were, as you said, you were also behind the prison walls. You have seen many shades of life, I suppose,
yeah.
right? So those also have shaped you as a person, I'm sure. It has made you more the person that you are right now sitting in front of me.
Yes. I believe all these experiences have enriched my ability to see life in more than one dimension, to look at it from the artistic prism, and more importantly, to internalize those experiences and then come out with credible works of poetry. And it's also important to keep in mind, there's this saying that poetry wipes away the dust of everyday life. So, and poetry, as Shelley also said, poetry removes the veil from the beauty of the world.
Yeah, and you have also written this work bilingually, isn't it? It's in
Yes.
Khasi as well as.
Yeah.
Is it the same works also translated into Khasi, or
Yes,
the Khasi
yes.
poems are separate?
These are works which I started first by writing them in English and then translate them into Khasi. They have been rendered into Khasi, which I did myself because I'd like to ensure that I maintain that fidelity to the mother tongue without sacrificing the flavor of the original in English.
Right. But then what, Paul, as many of our younger lot also are watching this program, you're an idol for many younger lot also who looks up to you too. And they also want to write, they also want to earn a living. So my next question is that, can poetry be a means to earn a living? Well,
Unfortunately,
does
no.
poetry sell?
No, poetry doesn't sell. In fact, there's a very limited readership
Right.
everywhere in the world, and I think even more so in the context of Meghalaya. I think the Khasis have always been fond of storytelling.
Okay.
We've, we've been able to imagine ourselves and connect ourselves with the nature around us, and some of the best stories that are in the realm of folklore have come out from these hills of ours. As far as poetry is concerned, I think it's fairly recent, and of course we had the powers, the traditional couplets in Khasi, but I think when it comes to poetry writing, this is of fairly recent origin, and it was only with writers and poets like Susotham that we got to express some of the best emotions in the form of poetry.
Right. But then should it be this way, Paul? Because Shillong, the capital of the state, has a sizable English-speaking citizen.
Population,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Because we are still known, I suppose, as the education hub, and that's why we have a lot of other people from other states of the Northeast coming and studying also. We have the quality, and the quality is still being maintained to a large extent.
Right.
And yet, in spite of having such a sizable English-speaking people, English-speaking students, the younger generation too, why do you think they don't have that flair of going into poems or into poetry? What do you think is stopping them?
I think one of the major problems that we faced with today is we live in such a fast-paced world, and with the invasion of technology, people generally would like to express themselves in as short a form as possible. That attention span has dwindled so much. People do not have time to capture and immerse themselves in the beauty of art anymore. People who, when we were kids, we would, if I, one of the things which earned me a lot of friends in college was that I would be requested to write love letters for my friends.
Right.
So I think that itself helps me to express, that warmth, that fascination, that sense of beauty which you would like to express as a teenager. Today we live in the world of the internet, SMS, WhatsApp, where we express ourselves very briefly, and sometimes even doing away with the finesse of language.
Absolutely. I mean, the messages are becoming shorter and shorter,
Right.
and
So
that is not really helping the children productively, I suppose, in this
Yes,
aspect at
yes.
least. Right?
And you really need time to be able to absorb the beauty of poetry and all great works of literature. Whereas we live in an age where everything is instant, the age of instant noodles and
yes. Instant food, fast food. Yeah, we need to go back to our roots to really understand, because I think to be able to write, one has to appreciate everything around us.
Yes.
And what I could sense just now from you is that you are a very romantic person at heart also.
Well, let my poetry speak.
Yes, so can we just listen to another such a poem where you have appreciated, you have expressed your romance with nature, or anything else that you have in mind to share with us?
I think I will share something romantic.
Okay.
This relates to the sense of worship that you feel for feminine beauty.
Okay.
This poem is called She. She weaves poetry with her seraphic eyes, and gods serenade to the rhythm of her movements. She sculpts dreams, redefines horizons, obliterates frontiers of reason. I wish I could entice her to the sunless dwelling of my heart and throb to the whims of her smile. I wish I could bathe in the luxuriance of her love and claim her shadow as my home. but fearing my world-soiled hands would shatter this icon of love, I can only offer hymns to her graceful ways and place myself beneath the pedestal forever.
Beautiful. That really shows that, deep down you also have a very romantic
Thank you.
person deep down inside you. What I understand also that your poems, they're written in very lucid, easy language, easy
Yes.
words, right?
It's very important that we are able to connect and communicate with the reader,
Right.
and which is why I've always believed in this poetry of feelings rather than cerebral poetry.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, let me just now come to another question. How important it is to hone and support, such skills? Because there are people, there are the younger lot who has those talent, but then they don't have a platform. We do not have magazines or journals also where they can contribute. So how do we really, because there are talented children who are penning down, but then they are not finding, and maybe they don't have the right. There are platforms for music, but we don't
Yes.
see much platform where a group of poets are coming together, and exclusively a magazine that is dedicated to works such as these, which will actually support youngsters and budding poets.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on its head. This is the sad reality of Shillong today, that we are not able to give our talented youngsters the needed platform to express themselves creatively. And in the 80s and the 90s, the scene was far better. We still had the Shillong Poetry Society, which was alive and kicking and always bustling with activities. And then we had periodicals like Lyrics, which was a compilation of original works by budding poets. Today that scene has completely come to a halt.
Right.
And I think it's high time we do something to change the situation.
But isn't it also high time to include the Khasi language into the 8th schedule of our constitution? That has been going on for a long time, but so far it just springs out, it dies off again, the momentum. But yet it has not been. How important it is really to take the language of this place to a much higher echelon.
It is very important, because for us the language is one of the intrinsic features of our identity.
Right.
And apart from that, the whole world should know that in this entire country of more than 1 billion people, there is still one community that speaks the only language that belongs to the Austro-Asiatic language,
Right.
the Mon Khmer stock.
Right.
And to that extent, Khasi deserves that, very richly deserves that recognition. And in fact, even in the 1960s, this language was studied at the Calcutta University. So it's still an enigma as to why the center has not been able to give this much needed recognition to the language.
I really hope that now it is time for it to be included, isn't it?
Yes.
Because the demand has been made for so long now.
For so long,
and it cannot be ignored anymore.
Right. In fact, in 2005, I
Right.
was part of the cabinet, and we were able to legislate to include Khasi and Garo as associate official languages of
Right,
Meghalaya,
right.
which was a major milestone, considering this need to get the language included in the 8th schedule.
Absolutely, and we really hope that under your leadership also, this is another thing that you should, I think, take it up.
It's
Right?
yeah.
Okay.
We look
Now,
forward to it.
quickly now, besides these, earlier also you have written certain works.
Right.
Just maybe you can mention a few of them for us.
Well, one is my book of short stories. It's a collection of short stories. This is called Shithiyar Ki Khana Linkon.
Okay.
I wrote this when I was in high school.
Okay.
And they have now been also translated. A couple of them have been translated into English, and there have also been PhD dissertations based on these
All right.
short stories.
Okay.
And more importantly, recently, after I completed this book of poems, I've also managed to find time to write short stories in English, and these should hopefully be out in the next couple of months or so.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. We really wish you luck. So that means you're delving between both in poems as well as in short stories as well, fiction as well.
Right.
But between them, which is your higher love or more love? Which one do you have more love for?
I think it's natural for me to love poetry better, because I believe poetry, as I said, is inborn. It is in your blood. But short story writing is a craft, but yes, it's a beautiful craft, and it has influenced literature in a major way.
Absolutely. So that means in the years ahead, we will continue to see Ba Paul active in politics as well as active in writing too.
Hopefully.
Or, yes. Or do you plan to take sannyas maybe and delve and completely devote yourself to either of them?
See, I think, as I had said earlier, I think, as somebody had said, you can have ex-ministers and ex-politicians, but never ex-poets. So poetry is eternal. One can always take sannyas, give up, hang on your boots from active public life, but one does not cease to be in love with poetry.
Absolutely. So as we are almost wrapping up this program, we wish you tons of good luck, Ba Paul. May you continue to do the good work that you're doing as a public servant, as well as, bringing out such lovely poems and short stories. May you continue to write and spread the cheer all around. But then we will again not let you go till you once again read a little bit more as we wind up this program today.
All right. I think I'll read out this one because when I read it in 1996, Khushwant Singh had come to Shillong, 1995, and he immediately fell in love with this poem, and which is why he did his review of my poetry later on that year. This is called To Whom It May Concern. You regard us as rebels without a cause, chinks in your armor, immigrants, and see in our struggle, in our wall graffiti painted in red, an insistent call to bloodbath. You can't be more mistaken, my friend. Or perhaps you simply refuse to come to terms with wild tribals using high-flown jargon like human rights and human dignity. Understand us? Is that not a bit too condescending, like consenting to share your meal with a leper? Yet these hills have a beauty of their own, shaping in us thoughts and dreams and philosophies alien to your fast-paced world. If only you could, for a moment, see the world through our eyes, feel it with our hearts, share our history, folk tales, myths, you would have little reason to spurn, scorn, or shun us. Join us, join the mainstream, your eternal chant. Very catchy lines, like those alluring billboards decking up the skies of Delhi. But wait, my friend, we will break bread with you for sure, but only when you can truly accept that we haven't descended from treetops to be in your midst. Stop insisting on passports when we identify ourselves, or leering at our women folk just because they look so unlike your daughters and your wives.
Absolutely. This poem of yours speaks a lot, and on that note, we wind up this program today. Dear viewers, I'm sure that as I had this interaction, a one-on-one, a very up-close and personal interaction with Ba Paul, whom we fondly call him as Ba, you have enjoyed also watching this program. Today, you have seen another side of him very closely, very intimately, and we hope that you'll join us next time again when we will bring for you another such guest. From all of us here from this very cozy room of Mr. Paul Lyngdoh's house, we take leave. Bye-bye and take care.